Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to When We Walk. This is a little podcast where we discuss the questions we all ask as we walk through life. I'm Micah.
I'm Shireen.
Let's chat.
So, I have learner in my top 5.
You do.
I do.
Very strong.
I always used to say I could be a student forever.
Yes.
I loved.
You do.
It makes me sad when our kids come home and say, I hate school. I'm like, I loved school.
Yeah.
I mean, not everything about school. It's hard.
Yeah.
But like college, I loved college.
Yeah.
I remember sitting, this is how much of a nerd I am, everyone. I remember sitting in my dorm room and my roommate, Abby, we were both taking biology at the same time. And we would be in our bedroom studying, which were like across the hall in our apartment. Okay. And I would be sitting on my bed reading my biology book and be like, oh, Abby, did you read this? Can you believe this? And
gosh.
and she'd be like, I know, isn't that crazy?
Not at all. That is not how I studied.
We were such nerds.
I studied with like, is this going to be on the test or not?
Oh my gosh.
Do I need to try to remember this or not? What are the chances
they
will ask this question, and how might they ask it? And so how much of this information do I need to retain?
Which is funny because that's not who you are today.
No, but man, when I was in college studying speech communication and
you just wanted to get through school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love learning.
Yeah.
I love it. So I thought, what if we all share something we are learning right now? So we've got Joran back here.
Yeah.
What's up, Joran?
Hey.
Naomi too. Wave and say hi, Naomi. Joran, what's something you're learning right now?
So something about me is I get very hyper fixated on something and I want to learn all about it, and it's not about like things that I probably should know, like book smart things. It's about skills that I probably will never need, but
you never know.
You never know. You're going to be prepared though.
That's true. So recently it's been about fish.
Oh.
Not like eating fish, but like taking care of them.
Oh.
Okay.
So I drove by a PetSmart one day and I was like, I'm just going to buy one. So I got one. And then after having him for a while, we decided that we needed a office fish as well.
I saw this when we walked in.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of fish is it?
A beta.
A beta.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his name is Notion. And he's great.
Oh my gosh, this is so wonderful.
I love that. Have you figured out how to take care of him?
Yeah, I've figured out way too much, honestly.
Okay.
I feel like people normally get beta fish because they're so like low maintenance, and it's like they live forever and you don't really do a lot.
And they only need like one little bowl or something, right?
Yeah, but
now, y'all have a whole setup over there.
It to the next level. I've looked up like how to cure anxiety for fish, the water levels, like what's the correct level to like help with like depression. I don't know, just like random things that I don't need to know, but for some reason I feel like maternal.
That is amazing.
Do you make Notion? Do you know how to make him flex his gills, like flap his?
There's ways, yeah.
So my understanding, I had a beta when I was in third grade, and it was you show them themselves in a mirror.
Yeah, or they have like a little replica fish that you put in there, and it's like exercise for them, I guess.
Oh, it is.
Oh, wow.
Exercise.
To fight, yeah.
Wow. You really have gone very deep into this world of beta fish.
Yeah, a little too deep.
So when you say you're learning, you basically become a beta fish expert. Mm-hmm. So any questions anyone has on beta fish?
You're the one.
Just let me know.
Joran. Okay. I can't wait to see how well Notion is going to do, because he's going to be low anxiety. He's going to be working out. Strong gills.
Ready to fight.
It's going to be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is amazing. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. It's great.
What are you learning?
Right now, so I'm really excited this year about focusing on golf.
I know. You're not like learning golf, but you're always learning golf.
But I am, because I have a lot to learn. I'm not a good golfer. But B, so I always enjoy watching golf this time of year.
You do.
Because the places they're playing, they're right now in Florida.
It's so beautiful.
And so just watching it like on a Sunday afternoon after church is like so relaxing to me, to like the beauty of it all.
Yeah.
But also different than other sports. like golf commentators, as they're explaining why the golfers are doing what they're doing, I'm constantly learning things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's different from like you listen to Tom Brady do commentary on a football game and he's explaining why a quarterback is doing the things he's doing. And I'm like, that doesn't
apply to my life.
Right. I'll never need to be able to hold a ball like that. But with golf, since I want to get good at it, as they're talking about here's why he did this club, or here's where he put it in his stance, or here's why he's choosing this shot. It's just like this little information dump.
So you're like learning as they're commentating.
Learning how to play by listening to the commentators talk about.
Are you learning through osmosis? Because every time I walk in, you are asleep on the couch.
So it starts.
Because golf puts you to sleep.
It does. So here's how it
I don't know.
Depending on how much time I have that afternoon, usually I'll turn it on. I'll listen for a little while. I'll doze off. And then I wake back up right around towards the end of the tournament
on a Sunday.
Yep. And so that last like hour, if I've got that much time, I'll just take it in and learn. And I'm fresh because I just took a nap. It's great. Yeah.
That's great. I had to call you out on your golf afternoon naps. It is. I'm not going to lie. It's true. It's very peaceful. Their commentating is very peaceful. It's not like watching any other sport.
No, it's not.
Okay, what am I learning? I've talked about it all the time. I'm always a learner. I'm still on my sourdough learning journey. I think right now what I'm learning is we're in process with Laylee going into college soon. Next year she'll be a senior, and she is into musical theater. And I'm learning so much about this world and this process of her going into college. There are whole companies and podcasts and books written about just the process to get into college for musical theater. It is that rigorous and crazy. Challenging. And so I feel like it's a learning curve. Here's the hardest part about this learning curve. I will learn it and I will probably never do it again because she's our only one. And it's like this like horrible
so many other parents.
Will I though?
The way parents have helped us by giving them, because the few people we've talked, I mean, like you can learn stuff online. You can, the programs that are available that you can partner up with. The most valuable moments of your learning process, I can attest to, have been the parents you've talked to.
That's true.
The handful who have gone through it before, and you're able to ask the questions. So then you're going to be that for somebody one day.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
There you go.
We'll see. I hope so. It is definitely a learning curve, but I do still like learning things.
You do. You love it.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads us into our question for today.
Okay.
Which is this: what's been a revelation that you've had recently, just about the Lord, about the Word? And you and I kind of pre-chatted about this a little bit, and I think we would both agree that the whole issue of forgiveness is something that it's water that we're swimming in right now. And it's, there's immediate reasons for that, but I would go all the way back even to a year ago when I taught on forgiveness.
Yeah, you
here
did
at Lifegate. Did a whole series.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness is the future.
Oh, okay.
And it was based off the Desmond Tutu quote from, that if we're going to have a future as a nation, we're going to have to learn to forgive one another.
Coming out of apartheid.
Yep. And so there is, so we talked about this last year's church, and to me, it just continues to come back up.
Yeah, it does.
In so many like little things in life, but also in big ways. It just, the whole issue of forgiveness is so huge. And as followers of Jesus, that often doesn't come as a surprise because we know Jesus died for our forgiveness.
Faith, right.
But I just think for so many of us, and let me just speak for kind of the charismatic crowd because I'm one of them. That a lot of times the forgiveness piece for us is like, hey, Jesus died for your sin. Raise your hand if you want to pray this prayer.
Right. It's this personal.
Receive the Lordship of Jesus into your life. And then learn all the awesome things about life with Jesus from that point forward. Learn how to hear God's voice.
Your sin's been forgiven.
Learn how to operate in the gifts of the Spirit. Like enjoy worship. Like develop
the
a prayer life
we want. Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many other, and often we move pretty quickly on from the concept of forgiveness, both the forgiveness that God gives us and really letting that sink deep into our hearts because it's massively transformative.
It is.
When it sinks deep into our hearts. But then also internalizing it so that we can then give it away to others. And I just think the church, myself included, us included, the church, we struggle that we are that we are the forgiven people. We often struggle
the most
to live forgiveness.
I think so.
And even in the church, we have all kinds of reasons why, well, in this case, here's why I haven't forgiven yet, or here's why, I've forgiven, but here's why there's still tension, or here's why there's still lack of relationship. We've kind of toyed with, we've kind of messed with this concept in ways that I don't know that God intended for us.
I think some of it is because
it is hard.
It's hard. That's
so
part
hard.
of it.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's uncomfortable. We hate being uncomfortable. We like comfort. And so I think some of it is messages of the world. I think our cultural narrative.
Like forgiveness is immoral. Like, and some people would say it's immoral.
It is damaging. I've read articles. So it's funny because, current revelation, maybe some of it is because of just life for us, but also I've been learning because I'm supposed to teach on it at Restoration coming up soon. And so I started rereading this book by Timothy Keller. I think it was his last book before he passed away.
I believe.
Jordan, can you look it up? It's called Forgive. I think it is, which to me says a lot. If you're, because he was dying, right? He had cancer. I don't know how long
I think maybe a couple years
when he found out he had cancer. Can you look up what was Timothy Keller's last book? Like, see if that's what we can figure it out. If we can figure out if this was it, because to me this says something about, like, he wrote so many books. He has lived a lot of life. I mean,
he didn't start writing books till he was 50.
Really? Well, then he just started.
It was 50. I know it was later. I'm pretty sure it was.
Basically,
50.
we just need a whole bio on Timothy Keller.
Because I heard him on a podcast say, like, I don't know that I had much to say that could be held in the form of a book before 50.
And he came from a generation where books, it took a lot to get a publisher and get someone to write a book, publish a book for you. Yeah. Whereas now anyone can write a book. Yeah. And so I wonder if that was part of it too, is I need to make sure that I have something worthwhile saying and that it will live for a long time.
Was it his last book?
Yeah, Forgive, Why Should I and How Should I?
Oh, okay. Here's why I think that's so significant. And I don't know if he knew it was going to be his last book, but I'm guessing, I think he had cancer right around this time. But it makes me think, what a message to go out on, because you realize it's Desmond Tutu. Forgiveness is the future. It is the basis of our faith, and it is how we should literally live every day of our life. Out of this forgiveness that we've received and the way we offer it to the world is literally everything. And here I am thinking I'm going to give a 20-minute talk at a conference on, on forgiveness, when this guy who's so smart, who's lived so much life, who, has walked a lot, and he wrote a whole book on forgiveness. But that is, I think, why some of this feels like a more current revelation. Yeah. Because it's just the climate of our culture would say, and I think I read this in his book, that forgiveness is actually causes more damage. There is a wave. I don't know if it's fully hit the church, but there's pieces of it in the church that forgiveness can cause more damage to a relationship if you try to go and repent, or if you offer forgiveness, it can cause more damage in a relationship. Yeah. And that's because of blog posts and things that came out in, I think it was the early to mid 2000s. There was one specific one that said, put out there, to hell with forgiveness. And here's all the reasons it's damaging. And it got so much traction that it really caused a wave of, forgiveness is
Was that
damaging.
written by a Christian? Do you know?
No.
Yeah. It's, I think where I really do understand the challenge around forgiveness, at least within the church, because it's kind of it's a card that we have misplayed.
Yeah, I think you're
ways,
right.
That in some ways leadership has misplayed to say, hey, I know that I messed up, but time for you to forgive me.
Yeah. Forgive and forget, right?
Or,
move on.
Yep. I know he didn't do the right thing in that scenario, but like, it's time for you to move on.
And kind of placing it's you should forgive. It is, yes, correct. It is a command in scripture, but we've weaponized that in the church and people have watched that happen for too long.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a card in the deck is one way to say it, but it's been misplayed. And I think that's caused people to really question the concept in general. And I would even wonder, like the person who wrote this blog post, if they grew up in the church and saw it misused in a way that resulted in, coercion or, protecting power or whatever.
Because it has at times been used to brush off the hurt, brush aside the sin.
Yep.
Even maybe at times even cover it up, which is so wrong.
Yeah, it is.
It's so wrong. It's such a sad use of the beauty of what the cross really represents.
It really is. And so to that, I think so. Therefore, we shouldn't throw it out.
No, of course not.
We can't throw it out.
We can't throw it out because then what's the point of all that we believe?
Everything. So how do we? Maybe the problem is we don't understand it, and then how to then walk in it. And Keller, I think, does just such a really beautiful job in the book of laying out the 4 aspects of true forgiveness.
Yeah,
of what
he does.
Biblical and relational forgiveness really is. And so his 4 things are naming the wrong as wrong. So you're not kind of whitewashing the sin.
You have to call it out. You have to identify it. Yep.
Identify with the perpetrator as a fellow sinner. That is a big one. And we'll talk about that in a second.
That's a big asterisk by that one.
That is the catalyst. And then there is releasing the wrongdoer from liability and then aiming for reconciliation. And so let's just talk about them one by one.
Okay.
Just briefly. First,
I want to hear Joran's response to hearing these 4 things as kind of the 4 parts of forgiveness from kind of your generation and what, you have grown up in, maybe the swirl more of the world. How does that hit to think, okay, I have to name the wrong as wrong, identify the perpetrator as a fellow sinner, releasing the wrongdoer from liability, and then aiming for reconciliation?
I think that like my generation has been like our mindset is very like, I'm trying to think of the way to word it, but like if someone has wronged me, there's no way to undo that wrong. So they'll always be wrong. Like there's no
like that's there
reconciliation.
Forever.
Or I guess there's no way for you to like, I don't want to let you back in my life because like you're just going to do
canceled.
it again. Yeah.
Yep.
It's still a very much of thing. Like it's cancel culture.
For sure. Yeah. So I think this is rare to see people have like enough self-awareness to be like, everyone's human, everyone's living life. Like for the first time, like it's not like people have all this experience and they're going to go in and always do the right thing.
Right.
And so it's easier for you to have that mindset of I'm going to be right because like I can only see my perspective, if that makes sense.
Which that's really good for you to be aware of at such a young age too, because you have to understand grace at a young age, because goodness knows we're all going to mess up as we get older. And if you can learn how to have grace with one another early, then you can walk out, either being free from offense or learning how to forgive, which is crucial for the rest of life.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. And the part of like, I think about that when we were reading these 4, like your generation really clings to that first one because we didn't do that well in the church.
I was going to say,
naming the wrong as a wrong.
Before it was just like, it's
forgive
okay.
and move on.
Right. Yeah. We just need to move on. It wasn't that bad, or it's okay. It's under the blood or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we never
All
really
those
named
phrases.
the wrong as a wrong. An entire generation or 2 that were kind of taught like, just get over it and move on.
It's under the blood.
So now a younger generation, rightfully so, is being like, no, that is wrong, and we need to call it that.
We need to call it out.
But they don't then know how to move forward from there.
And that's what I hear you saying, kind of, that we recognize the wrong, but we want to stay there.
We have no problem recognizing the wrong.
Right. And like pointing it out and leaving it there. And instead of walking through these next phases, it's cancel.
Yeah,
and
we
walk
harbor
away.
bitterness, and
Yeah.
it leads to worse things later on.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. I think it's helpful to think that we have looked at this differently in different generations. And so now what do we do with it? So
Yeah.
let's walk
And
through these.
I do
real
think
quick.
too, like recognizing the wrong is wrong. We don't have to get deep into this, but that does require that we know the difference between good and evil.
For sure. I
And
think you
that's
have
been
to.
confused in our world. And
has.
so, we have to, that there's more nuance to that than just, first you do have to name the wrong, but you have to also know what wrong is.
Right.
In order to name it. And
Because there are things that now we think, because I've just been hurt, that is automatic. Like, you sinned against me, and it's not always. Just because I've been hurt doesn't mean you've sinned against me.
Right.
And I think that's where we have to go back to Scripture and really understand, okay, what's actual, like, I've been sinned against in a way, and then what is like, yeah, that person was just being silly, dumb, whatever, and it just hurt.
yeah.
And
There's a
I'm
difference
picking up
between
in a
those
little
two
bit
things.
of an offense.
Yeah, there can be a difference.
And I think, which is still wrong, and you can still call that out, right? From what we've learned, it's Matthew, 5 or Matthew 18. You go to that person, right? And you say, hey, this bothered me. This hurt.
Yeah.
And hopefully that person's like, oh my gosh, I didn't intend it that way. So I think it's still important to name wrongs that just hurt, but we also have to know there are actual deep sin that
cause harm.
that cause
That don't just hurt,
harm
they cause
and
harm.
destruction, and so that does need to be called out.
Yep, for sure. So name the wrong is wrong. The next one, and this is the one I think almost everyone misses,
I think so.
is identify with the perpetrator as a fellow sinner, which means
That's so hard.
after you recognize what's wrong, the next step is to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
It's not to look at the person.
No.
And to do your own self-reflection on the ways that you've wronged others. And this is where the gospel comes into play.
Right. This is what he would say. This is the vertical part of forgiveness. And if you can't understand this, then you can't even get to this step.
You can't go to, and you can't
Right.
move beyond it.
Yep.
And so it's understanding what God has forgiven you of. You could say what other people have forgiven you of, depending on your life circumstance. That's going to vary. But as a Christian, we could all agree, hopefully, what God has forgiven us of. And that's where I think we often just don't spend enough time getting in touch with how much we've been forgiven. That's
Our
why
sinful
the beauty,
nature,
this-
right? Our sinful nature.
Yeah.
We don't want to think about it
Yeah.
because it's covered in the blood.
For sure. This is the first, I've been following Jesus for most of my life. This year is the first year where I've tried to take Lent seriously.
Yeah.
It wasn't a tradition I grew up in. And the whole emphasis of Lent is getting in touch with your humanity, your
sinful
brokenness,
nature.
your sinful nature.
That's why you put ashes on your
And it's not to
forehead
make you
beginning.
feel bad. It's so that you can feel God's grace. The more you understand what you've been forgiven of, the deeper you sink into the heart of the Father. So thinking of even of Paul, a lot of people talk about this. Like if you follow Paul's letters in chronological order of when he wrote them, he is more and more
so true.
boastful in a
his-
sense of recognizing
his
boastful of
sin.
God's grace because he has become more and more aware that he is the chief of sinners.
Yeah, he finally gets to where he says, I'm the chief of sinners.
Yeah. I'm worse than all of y'all.
Yes.
And so to be able to, once you've identified something as wrong, to be able to pause, kind of look in the mirror or look at God, look at the cross.
I think it's look
and
at
to
the
say,
cross.
Yeah, and to say, but I'm the chief. Like I've done, look what I've been forgiven
just
of. And
as-
it's not about like how bad your history was or not. It's the fact that we were all enemies of God before Jesus died for us and won us back to the Father. And so it's to me, that's a very humbling and sobering reality that we need to carry in our hearts, the amount that God has forgiven us. And then it allows us, when we realize what we've been forgiven, to then take the next steps of forgiveness towards others.
You say a phrase all the time. What is it? You're more sinful than you know.
You're more sinful than you think. But more loved than you know. That's also Timothy Keller.
Oh, is it? Look at us.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have anything original.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know that anything's super original. We all take thoughts from one another, but I think that is a really beautiful statement and it sounds so simple and so beautiful. But when you really dig into it and realize how much God loves you, and then you kind of get in touch with this word is so harsh, but I kind of like it, your wretchedness. Like, it's a good word sometimes to use and remember we really are kind of like deep down in our flesh. Like, that's who we were before Jesus. And when you remember how much he loves you, there's freedom to be like, yeah, I am really sinful. And you're not ashamed of it, because you know how loved you are. And I think that's why Paul could keep saying it as worse and worse and worse, because he had more revelation of God's love. And you gain more freedom to say, yeah, I'm terrible. And I need forgiveness every single day, because I get mad when I'm driving in the car, and I yell at my kids when I need them to put on their shoes faster, and I get frustrated with my spouse, and I'm hurt by this person, and all of it. And so I think we have to remember that. I also think you even talking about earlier, the way we've presented the gospel as this, like, I don't want to say soft. The cross isn't soft, but sometimes our presentation of it can feel very soft in a way of like, and it is, Jesus is so gentle when he brings us to him. But when we think of it just in our individual selves of like, oh, come to the cross, he will forgive you, he loves you so much. When we forget that the cross is for a whole, when it's a communal thing, I think when we just think about ourselves individually and we forget that the cross is for many sins, like the sins of all, we tend to think it's enough for me. I don't know if it's enough for your sin. And that's when it gets hard to identify with the perpetrator. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, when I think it's not enough for the person who wronged me, I'm not that bad. But when we've been taught a cross that's good enough for me, but maybe not good enough for everyone. And I don't think that we say it that way, but I think when we present it so individual, we forget that he came to save a people. Like, that's the beauty of the story of Israel. Like, this is about a whole people. And Jesus died for all of our sins. He died for the person who wronged you too, for their sin and their injustice that was caused to you. And when we can remember that, I think it does help level the playing field again and go, oh, wait, there isn't levels of sin and I'm better than that person who hurt me. And I think, I don't want to say we watered it down, but when it becomes so individualistic, like we are in our society, we miss the beauty of the wholeness of the cross.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe that's just a thought I've had with this.
We totally do. I mean, it's Luke 7, Jesus, at the religious leader's home, the immoral woman, the Pharisees are there, and she's adoring him and washing his feet, and the religious leaders condemn her, and Jesus responds, she who has been forgiven much loves much, and he who has been forgiven little loves little. And it wasn't about she's immoral, religious leaders, you've lived a pretty good life. It wasn't about comparing sin levels. It was about her revelation of what she had been forgiven of. And that these religious leaders had not yet had a revelation, and so they couldn't be gracious. So, it's the revelation of God's love for us and God's grace in our life that then moves us to the next level. We can
identify with the perpetrator as a fellow sinner, but that takes deep revelation and deep work. And then hopefully from there, you can release the person who's hurt you. You can release the wrongdoer from any liability. And that's also something we don't like.
Because we want our understanding of justice. We want that.
Yeah.
for the person.
But I don't think, I know when I've read through his book and I'm still going through it for the second time, it doesn't mean there aren't consequences. That this is not what this means. This is like our personal hold on what we think that person should get, while trusting that justice is also done at the cross. We remember that sin has been covered on the cross, but justice has also been taken care of. I mean, the scriptures are very clear. God, vengeance is mine. Like that is his to take care of. And sometimes it will happen in the natural because there are consequences of sin in the natural. When we sin against someone, we break relationships, we hurt others. We think it's just to the one person, but a lot of times it's to periphery people. And so all of the things that we want to happen to that person who hurt us, we actually have no control over. And when we get to release it, we remember vengeance is the Lord's. It's not mine. He can deal with them how he wants to deal with them. And I have no control over that. And I need to free myself from thinking I do.
And that's the part that can feel so wrong.
It feels wrong.
Is I'm going to release you from my demand that you fill in the blank.
Repent even. Like we can't. We technically shouldn't even.
Forgiving others has nothing to do with their
level of repentance. And that's a hard one too.
It is. Because that's the one way that we kind of are demanding our version of justice. If you give me an apology, then I will.
Or if it's enough, like not even just come and say you're sorry. I need you to grovel. I need you to weep. I need you to, like a lot of times we think we need something specific to be able to fully forgive. And it's just not the way of Jesus. I mean, he was on the cross and he was saying, Lord, forgive these people. They don't even know what they're doing. They're literally in the act of crucifying me, and I'm releasing them from.
And it's been said before that, when you release them from liability towards you, you're not. You're actually not freeing them, you're freeing yourself.
Right.
Like the one who gets imprisoned when you won't release them from liability is not them. They're going to go forward and live their life.
They are.
Especially if they have a revelation of God's grace.
That's true.
But you'll be stuck in your own prison. And you'll see the bars, but you'll be wrong about who's behind them.
Oh, that's really good.
So I think it's being able to do that. And that's hard. I mean, that's so hard. And that's why you need good friends and good counseling, and you need to be patient with yourself. That this takes time. This is not
this
just
isn't a one transaction.
But it is still important that you give ultimate vengeance to the Lord and you release the person from the wrong that they've done to you. That could, in many cases, can't ever be undone.
No,
they can never be undone. And so you have to decide what you're going to do with that. And then it gets to the last piece, which is aiming for reconciliation. And this is an interesting one that he really lays out, that if forgiveness is genuine, you're always at least open to reconciliation.
Or you're moving towards it in some form. If possible.
Reconciliation requires both. And so that might not always be possible. Sometimes the person is dead. Sometimes there's no longer any contact. Sometimes wisdom would say there doesn't need to be contact.
Or at least for a span, there needs to be no contact.
But at least the heart posture is, if it were possible, I would do it. And if it were possible, I would let go to the degree I need to let go in order for reconciliation to happen.
And the hard part of this is we hear this and we are maybe still in, the first steps of learning to forgive. And so the idea of reconciliation feels like I can never. That is never going to happen, not in whatever. But once you've actually really walked through forgiveness, it probably, I know in our lives, at least for me, there's hope for it again. You have renewed hope. You have a renewed willingness. Whether that person will or not is not up to you, but at least you are in a posture of like, I think I could receive that person back, or I think I could try to make a step toward them. And I think we can't fathom it when we're still walking through it. And so I do think it's a great litmus test on where we are in the forgiveness process. So when we say things like, I've forgiven them, but
I will never have a conversation with them for the rest of my life, or
think
I will
that's
never trust them again, or I
Yeah.
will like fill in the vow. Like I've forgiven them, but I will never, or they will always.
I think that's an indicator of where our heart
it's
is.
like, okay, you're beginning the process that you can
You're still in
say
it.
you're going to forgive them, but you're probably not really there yet. And I think too, let me just say, when I talk about reconciliation, I think some people think that means the level of relationship is restored to what it was before.
Yeah, no.
Where I would say, I think
Doesn't
more
have to be at all.
often than not, it has to do with peace with one another.
Right.
You feel at
Peace and
with
blessing.
one another.
You can
Yeah.
bless.
Yeah. So you might never be back in intimate relationship, but you can be at peace with the person, and that person's at peace with you. And that's reconciliation in my mind. So you see them at the grocery store and you don't get triggered, that there's peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would even go as far as to say bless. Jesus tells us
Yeah.
to love
Yeah, for sure.
and bless our enemies. Like when we can speak blessing over someone, that's a form of love, you know? And I think if you can get on social media and see someone's life who has hurt you and you've forgiven, and you can see something, you know, good in their life and go, I'm so glad, Lord, that you can bless them. You know, I mean, that is ultimate.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be in a relationship with them, but that to me shows a level of reconciliation
Yeah.
that I can bless this person.
That's true.
I'd say that is a beautiful, loving heart posture towards someone who at some point was an enemy.
Yeah, that's good. So maybe one way to kind of wrap this up is our feelings. We're all we're not always really in touch with our feelings, but
Not
when it comes to
everyone is.
forgiveness, there's a lot of feels when it comes to forgiveness. And I think I'm thinking this through, so I'm just going to test this theory and you give me
Okay.
your thoughts. But if you're to think about each stage and how it makes me feel
Yeah.
as a confirmation that I think I'm doing it, like I think I'm moving in the right direction, I would say the first step, acknowledging the wrong, is you feel the pain of what was done to you.
You can feel
you actually
hurt.
feel it.
Yeah.
And you're not just ignoring it and you're not sweeping it away. You're actually feeling the pain, which I think is important. The next one, identify with the perpetrator as a fellow sinner. I think you start to feel a level of compassion for the person.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I remember my counselor talking me through this years ago with a forgiveness issue. And he was like, it sounds like you're starting to feel compassion towards.
Okay.
And I'd never used that language before. And so I think you start to, because you have a revelation of what God's forgiven you of, it gives you even the tiniest compassion towards them, recognizing
Right.
they're just a fellow human being who is also a sinner,
Yeah.
who also needs grace in the same way that I needed grace.
Yeah.
And so you start to feel compassion. I think the next layer is you release liability. I think that's where you start to feel peace.
Maybe some freedom.
In that. And then I think that last one of reconciliation, like you're saying, like you start to feel like you could bless them.
Yeah.
And if you see
You
them,
have
you
a feeling
could
of
desire
yes,
goodwill
yes,
for
you
them
desire
in their
goodwill
life.
for them.
And you could
Yeah.
release goodwill into their life. And I think those are good, like little feelers to consider as you're walking through forgiveness with people, whether it's the person who.
I think that's good. Those are good kind of litmus tests of what comes out of
We'll
you.
put them to work and see. Like I need to think about that a little
I
longer, but I
know,
think
I know.
it could help people, because it's one thing to use the Christian language, and that's what's so hard about this. It's like, yeah, I've forgiven them, or one of the things.
I've prayed the prayer. I've forgiven
Yeah,
them.
so one of the things that Pastor Les asked me one time talking about forgiveness, a great question, is not to ask people like, have you forgiven them, but to ask people, what do you feel when you think about them?
Yeah,
Because I think that's
really
where
good.
we get in touch with where we are in the forgiveness process. And so if we start to feel the pain, we feel compassion, we feel some peace and freedom, and then we feel some blessing towards them. I think that's a great way to kind of evaluate where I am in the
I
forgiveness
think that's
process.
good. Yeah. I mean, this is so complex. We could talk about this for multiple conversations, but I think this is a really good overview of what
For sure.
this looks like.
It's good.
No, it's,
So heavy topic,
Yes.
a lot of pain out there, a lot of trauma out
hopefully
there, a
it
lot of
didn't
hurt.
bring up too
lot of
much
harm.
in your
Yeah.
heart. But
So let's end with a little lighter. What's the dumbest thing or smallest thing or silliest thing that has made you angry lately?
so
Jordan,
many.
are you ready to, could you say? Okay.
Oh, I'm ready.
All right.
Oh,
right.
what you got?
So when we had like our small blizzard the other day, I was at a red light, and there was like a snowplow, like trying to get, I guess, the snow out of the middle of the intersection. And the light turned green, but the guy was still in the middle of the road, but the car behind me like laid on his horn. And people with like irrational road rage, I think some road rage is okay. Like if someone is like, I don't know, being annoying.
Irrational road
but
rage. Yep.
I was so annoyed with him, and I thought about it the entire way I was coming here. I was like, the entire way to church, I'm like thinking about this guy who like, it took like 2 seconds out of my day, and I'm like, I don't know why he did that. And it's still I'm still forgiving him, if I'm being honest, but I'm working on it for sure.
Why did he honk his horn at you? Oh, I'm sorry,
that.
Jordan.
It's good. It's
Jordan,
amazing
that's
how-
terrible.
It happens.
How traffic situations can get into our hearts.
I mean, honestly, that was going to be mine.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels so silly, but it's so real. And I think we can all relate. So true confession. I like to drive fast.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Mm-hmm. And so it annoys me when I'm in the fast lane and people are driving slow. Mm-hmm. Specifically on Dodge.
That's rational road rage right there. That's valid.
I'm like, no, I want to go over the speed limit, driver. And you're going under the speed limit, but you're in the fast lane. And I start to get really annoyed with people.
Mm-hmm. And the one in you comes out because you're like, this is the wrong way.
This is the wrong lane to be in.
Mm-hmm.
You're driving incorrectly. Mm-hmm. So maybe a little silly frustration towards people comes out of me.
It's good.
Turns out road rage is real.
It's a real thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know, for me.
You don't get that.
I mean, I get things, I get irritated
you do.
More easily than I should. Lately, I mean, I'm having trouble thinking of like a clear one that like stuck with me for a while, but I'm not going to name names.
Oh, dear.
And you're not going to even know who this was if I did name names. But there's a particular college basketball coach right now who just drives me crazy. And he's kind of a whiner, and he's pretty arrogant. And I find myself like I'll read an article about him, or I'll read a tweet by him or something like that. And I find that he lives in my heart longer than he should. Like I kind of like, it's one of those, like, if I could sit you down and have a conversation, it's the weirdest thing. Cause I'm not even like deep into college basketball.
No, you're not.
But there's something about this one particular guy and the way he interacts that,
it just kind of gets under your skin.
Gets under my skin.
Yeah.
And, I enjoyed recently after he made a comment that was getting a lot of traction, reading the comments. I was in the comment section.
Oh, that's when you know. But
I went to the
like,
comic section and I was just like, oh yeah, this is good.
That's
this is
when
good.
you know your heart's not in a place when you watch something and you're like, I'm going to go to the comment section. That's that.
And there are people out there that are listening who probably know
your heart before going to the comment section.
Who know exactly who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name names.
No, probably not.
Take a guess if you want to. Yeah. Okay.
So.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us on When We Walk. Hopefully this was encouraging to you as you walk through real relationships with real people. And we look forward to seeing you next time.